Physical Education for VCE webinar, the second in our series. My name is Caroline Williams, and I'm the publisher working with this incredible team on this new edition. And before I pass on to our expert presenters and authors today, I just want to go over a few important messages. Beginning, of course, with the acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Cengage Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. And then just moving on to some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and the video and these slides will be sent out next week to everyone who's registered. Please put all your questions in the Q&A and comments in the chat, and we'll have some designated time at the end to address as many questions as we can. And we've also got Rachel Whittle and Nicole Curry, who's our expert on Nelson MindTap, who will be answering some of your messages in the chat as Rob's stepping his way through all the slides. So please contact us at the email on the screen and also in the chat for any post-event questions too. So we're always keen to answer any. We're very excited about this series, so keen to answer any of your questions that you might have. So I was told by Rob to keep this really simple because he's got a lot to talk about today, but I've worked in educational publishing for a long time and worked on a lot of titles and series, but this has really been an extraordinary one to work on with Rob Malpeli and Rachel Whittle, Monique Sharp, Amanda Telford and Mark Corrie, just an extraordinary author team. And I'm just blown away every day by the level of expertise and really the passion for this subject and for the teachers who teach it and the students who are taking this subject. So it's really my pleasure, absolute pleasure to introduce Rob Malpeli, who I'm sure you all know, and Rachel Whittle, who I'm also sure you all know, just two fantastic authors and representatives of your community, I guess, as teachers for PE in Victoria. So over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Caroline. And thank you for everyone for giving up your afternoon. Hopefully we will get through this in the allocated time and we'll be able to answer any of the questions that you have. I'm really excited as the coordinating author to head up the team, but really excited about these are real high-end resources that we've actually been able to put together. There's strong study design alignment throughout every chapter, every module. And for those of you who are part of the focus groups that Cengage actually ran last year, some extensive focus groups, you'll see that we've actually listened to your wish list and all of those things have been incorporated wherever possible and more. We spoke about these sort of mind maps in our first webinar, but these actually show how different parts of the course are very much linked. So it actually breaks the course down into manageable chunks so students can actually see what they need to learn now, what they need to learn for next week, and what they need to learn for potentially the second semester or the later part of the year. So these are a really big feature of our resources. Every chapter starts off with a pulse check. And again, we're talking about catering for all levels of learning. And you'll notice the command words that are there. You'll notice list, identify, describe, provide, etc. So there's multiple access points for students. Most teachers wanted to sort of, get a handle on where their students are at in terms of their previous experience, what their likes were, what they've learned, etc. So these pulse checks are really important. And what you'll see on the screen there is that there's a signpost to an interview with Professor Damien Farrow. So we'll talk a little bit more about signposts and these digital resources, but there's a whole heap of things that kids can actually get into and really make their learning real as much as they possibly can. But again, you've got those pulse checks that give you that entry point to the chapter and to new content for students. And you've got those multiple layers of entry, sort of those lower entry command words, those middle and those higher order command words. There are a couple there actually you can see on screen. You'll see throughout all the resources that we've got, both the workbooks and the student books, that we've made clear reference to the command words. Many teachers have started using these in Year 9 sports science, Year 10 sports science electives to get their kids into that sort of practice. This is very, very explicit. So throughout the resources, we actually tell students what they're being asked to do via those different command words. And the focus group said that this was a really, really important point, and we've certainly put that in there. Something else that you'll see throughout this presentation and the resources is that there is an increased emphasis on links to the VCAR questions from previous exams. So again, getting students and their mindset into this is what we're learning in class, this is what we're going to have to reproduce at the end of year exam. We've broken each chapter into discrete modules. So you'll see there, for example, when you're performing a qualitative movement analysis, we've got 5 different modules. If you're looking at acute responses to exercise, there are 4 different modules. The focus group felt that it was really, really important to chunk the information for students, but also to show the different links that those actual modules do produce. We show that there's key knowledge and key skills. Again, referencing the VCAR and telling students the journey that they're about to undertake in class. For those of you who have had PD on Hattie, or for those of you whose schools want you to put learning intentions, make them really explicit, we have done exactly that in all of our resources. So in this module, you will learn about, and in this module, you will learn to. So very explicitly, students know the journey they're about to undertake. And what the researchers have found, and Hattie's at the forefront of this, is that if students know where they're heading with their learning and where we're heading with the teaching, they're more likely to engage with it. They're more likely to actually find it relevant and real for them. So a big plus, and thank you for those who suggested that we actually break the chapters into those modules, but also to show how those different modules do integrate and how the chapters are interrelated. The check-in questions we've had before, the chapter review questions we've had before, but what we've done is we've provided a greater variety of questions, different style of questions. So we've got the multiple choice questions, the short answer questions, we've got the extended responses, and we've also included the integrated responses, which I'll talk about when we look at the unit reviews. So these are fairly standard. You see these in all textbook for all different studies. We've actually made a point of actually providing those multiple access points for students and getting them to practice those different skills. So answering a multiple choice question, having a lower order response, so a list or an outline, having to actually apply your understanding via something that asks you to justify or compare or critique. And then we've actually applied that to an extended response in the actual unit summaries. Here we have those unit summaries that I've referred to. So at the end of Unit 1, there's a set of integrated and extended responses, which actually call upon 3, 4, 5 different chapters, multiple different areas of study. The Unit 3 integrated and extended response questions do exactly the same thing. And again, you can see that very, very clear reference to 2023 VCAR, something I'm so proud of in this latest grouping that we put together is real contemporary and current and real world examples. We couldn't put the Olympic results in because they're happening as we speak right now, but we've actually got in place 2023 images, data, interviews to make that learning as contemporary as we possibly can. And again, at the end of Unit 1, you've got a unit review that you can run or a mini exam, the same at the end of Unit 2, the same at the end of Unit 3, the same at the end of Unit 4. We've got this looking back and looking forward. So what we've tried to do is, as educators, we're looking at how we can piece together different parts of the course and how when we're teaching one part of the course, we can either highlight to students, this is what they're going to get further on in the track. Or again, once we're covering something, we can say to students, remember when we did this in class last term? So very, very explicitly throughout all the student books, we've actually got these looking forward sections and looking back. And in most cases, it's within each of the units. So year 11, unit 1, 2, year 12, unit 3, 4. But in some cases, for example, when we're talking about chronic adaptations to the muscular system, we actually make reference back in unit 4 to students who actually undertook the study in unit 1. Most students do undertake that unit 1, 2, 3, 4 journey. Some students accelerate and obviously go straight into 3, 4 and don't do the 1, 2. But again, the focus group wanted us to deliberately and explicitly show links between different modules, different chapters. So a real highlight of this resource is this looking back and looking forward that allows us as educators to sort of pay the information forward, or similarly to actually revise back to where we've actually taken students through. Real world examples. Again, we haven't got any current Olympic results, but we do have current Olympians. You'll see Nina Kennedy there, and she actually shared a gold with Katie Mooney in the 2023 World Athletics Championships. So by making the information as real and as current as possible, we hope that students will actually be able to engage and say, yes, I read about that. Yes, I saw that. Yes, I actually spoke to my teacher last year about that. So very, very current and contemporary examples in real world, and also in the case studies that we've actually put there. And I'll talk a little bit more about this particular case study shortly. So Unit 2, very, very new content, a qualitative functional analysis, very different from a qualitative movement analysis. Some similarities, but different in terms of the outcomes. Throughout the whole resources, we've tried to chunk that information together. We've got a lot of informations in graphs, in tables, in mind maps, in concept maps. And again, students who are visual learners, this is their go-to. They're the sort of students that we're telling them things and they're just not getting it. We show them things and then they have that light bulb moment. So again, this is pretty indicative of some of the tables, use of really powerful colors throughout. We've shown our page proofs to teachers and to students, and students love the use of colors. They love the use of the different images that we've got and the different examples that we've used throughout both of the Unit 1, 2, and 3, 4 resources. Worked examples. How many times have we found ourselves sitting with students and saying, well, this is how you actually unpack a question? The focus group said, we'd like you to include as many worked examples as you possibly can in the actual textbooks. Take a bit of the pressure off us and actually allow students to practice it in the class before they do the exams or do their SACs. So all the worked examples that we've got, and there are literally, I would say, not hundreds, but there's probably 4, 5, 6 worked examples per chapter. It highlights key parts in graphs, key parts in tables. There are lots of tips. For example, a horizontal line on a velocity versus time graph indicates a period of constant velocity. There are exam tips there in terms of how to answer a multiple choice question effectively to maximize your performance in a test, in a SAC, or in the end of year exam. So there's lots and lots of these worked examples throughout the actual text themselves. And here we have, rather than tips in terms of addressing a multiple choice question or in terms of looking at a graph, we've actually unpacked how you would answer a question, how you break an 8-mark question into its different components and parts. So without taking up too much time, and you can read this at your convenience, you'll get a copy of the recording next week, but it actually looks at how the steps to break down the question. So look at the command word. What does that command word mean? How do you link that command word to the stimulus material is really, really, really important. So again, the worked examples is a new feature and hopefully something that you will value. And obviously those of you in the focus groups, when you're book listing us, you'll say, yep, I had an input into that particular feature. Looking forward, looking back, we've got this already. So this particular chapter here is chapter 6. And it actually looks forward to chapter 10. So chapter 6 deals with energy systems. And it actually looks to chapter 10, where you're looking at different fitness tests to assess components and the energy systems. It also looks forward to chapter 15, where the concept of glycogen sparing is actually unpacked in greater detail. So again, one of these really, really important features that links together different parts, not only of the textbook, that's one important factor, but importantly how different parts of the course are linked together. Learning hacks, learning shortcuts. These are fantastic for students who are actually looking for ways that they can actually get a handle or get their heads around different concepts. So for example, this learning hack here basically says that you can use accept abbreviations. And in this case, CHO should be used instead of using the word carbohydrate in your responses. Here's a learning shortcut that actually, again, refers students to what you need to do when you're actually trying to understand and apply your knowledge to graph stimulus material. A learning hack makes things much easier for students. So again, what are enzymes and what is their feature in terms of an acute response or a response to a training principle? Here we have an example of a command term, so students actually understand what they're being asked to reproduce in their response, rather than just saying, well, what am I being asked for here? We've already looked at the interview with Damien Farrow earlier on. There are signposts throughout, and these signposts take students and teachers to Nelson MindTap. So, for example, in this first signpost, there's advice on how to answer an energy system interplay question. In the second signpost, there's an actual link to the Sport Dietitian Australia fact sheet. The third signpost down, there's actually from Unit 1-2, or Unit 1 actually, an interactive skeleton where students can actually go along and actually label bones and label muscles and see how they can actually do that. So a lot of interactivity is a big feature of this new resource that we've been able to put together. Rather than actually going through YouTube, which we do a lot as educators, and trying to find those relevant clips that we can bring to the classroom to make the learning real, we've actually done that with Nelson MindTap. So there's lots of links to interviews, to digital clips, and in this case, it's Lauren Parker, who was an elite triathlete. I don't know if you know Lauren Parker. She had a bike accident that left her paralyzed. So there's great information in there about her as an athlete, her recovery, her training, and there's a direct link to the 60 minutes clip on Nelson MindTap. Something I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword when you put information in a textbook. The teachers will say, I really value that, but it's not in the study design. Do I need to teach it? So very, very explicitly, and again, this is a result of those focus groups that Nelson and Cengage ran. We've identified what is above and beyond the study design. So this actually extends student application and understanding with concepts and principles that are outside the study design. So for example, think about how many times you've actually spoken about delayed onset of muscle soreness to your students. Not because you want them to reproduce it in a SAC or at the end of your exam, because it's not in those different media, but because it's real and because you don't want them to experience it. You want them to actually train in a very safe and effective way so as to minimize or to negate delayed onset of muscle soreness. So think about differences between males and females in terms of the way that their respiratory, cardiovascular, and muscular systems are actually designed. And that can explain why they perform differently. It can also explain why we choose tests are different and why the norms are different for the different sexes. So think about the EPOC. We talk about the fast and the slow part of EPOC, even though it's not in the study design. So again, we have it there for teachers in terms of teaching. We have it there for students in terms of for them to actually understand this in a little bit more depth, but also to identify that it's not in the actual study design. So here we have something about the lactate shuttle. And for those of you teaching who have taught fatigue, or for those of you who are going to talk about chronic adaptations a bit later on in this term or early on in term 4, how many of you actually talk about lactate being good and not necessarily saying that it's all bad and causes fatigue? Think about how many times your students have actually asked you about, well, how can lactate be good if it contributes to increased hydrogen ions and fatigue? How many of your students read about the lactate shuttle or have tutors who actually talk to them about it, or you introduce it to your class? Here it is, there for teachers, there for students, very, very clearly marked above and beyond the study design. So again, one of those things, those focus group identified, and we've actually been able to incorporate it there. I want you to be really, really honest, and I know that you've probably done this in Unit 1 and you've probably done it in Unit 4, where you actually talk about fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers. They're all in the study design. But when we're teaching this, quite typically, we're going to talk about fast twitch A and fast twitch B, or type 1 or type 2, or partially aerobic fast twitch fibers, or purely anaerobic. Above and beyond the study design, without a doubt. But I haven't got any significant sort of stats on this. but I'd be fairly confident saying that most of us would actually talk about the different types of fast twitch fibers and how they operate, etc. Again, above and beyond the study design, it's there, and it's there for us to sort of support and scaffold student learning. And it's some of those students who really want to take their learning to that next level that some of these above and beyond study design sections really cater for. Let's get into Nelson MindTap. And for teachers who have already book listed the Nelson series, and a lot of those are people who are in the part of the focus groups, a lot of them are teachers who haven't used Nelson before and have seen what's on offer, and they've thought Nelson MindTap is a game changer. So this is a whole new digital platform to enhance teaching and learning. There are interactive tasks, which I've already spoken about. There are templates. There are templates that include reflective folios, training programs, functional movement assessment templates. There are even some self-assessments for student templates that we can run off for them to actually do. Lots of interviews with performance and participation leaders. So Unit 1, 2, a lot around around participation, I beg your pardon. Unit 3, 4, more about performance. We looked at that differentiation in the last sort of webinar that we ran. There's interviews with leaders, experts, researchers, coaches, athletes. Again, don't waste your time with YouTube. It's here, it's targeted, it's specific to the VCE study design for PE. There are answers and work solutions to all questions that appear as pulse check, module review questions, chapter review questions that appear in case studies, collaborative tasks, etc. All the answers are there. There's also these new master classes that we've actually incorporated, which are basically 4 different types of PowerPoints. There's your standard PowerPoint. There are PowerPoints which the author of each chapter actually goes through and explains in greater detail. There are in-focus videos and PowerPoints, and there's also animations. I want to talk a little bit more about that just now. Oh, here's one of those templates I was referring to. So this is a student self-assessment template. It actually gets students to identify pretty quickly and easily, I need to revise this, I'm getting there, or I've got this particular content area. I understand this at those 3 different levels. And in this case, it has to do with health-related fitness and functional movement assessment. So the PowerPoints. These are not the game changers. Standard PowerPoints, every chapter has a PowerPoint which can be used as is, or you can modify it as a teacher. You can add your existing PowerPoints to it. You can put in new slides, put in new images, go nuts. Totally modifiable to you. A lot of teachers set it as pre-class viewing or as homework. You can even use those PowerPoints for revision. Students love them because they print off each slide as a flashcard. Next level, this is the game changer. For those of you familiar with another resource that I work on, PowerPoints that teachers and educators actually talk through and unpack. So next level PowerPoints, each chapter author will actually talk students through the key knowledge with real world applications. So it's essentially the original PowerPoint, the standard PowerPoint, with actually teachers and the authors rather unpacking them in greater detail. Next level, every PowerPoint, you know that you want to dive into things a little bit more deeper. Some concepts, some principles need more explanation than others. We haven't put that in the standard PowerPoint. We haven't taken up your time and students' time when we're actually having the chapter author provide greater detail. These are specific sections and videos that actually unpack concepts in greater detail. So, for example, it might be that a standard PowerPoint talks about the lactate inflection point, a definition, how to find it on a graph, how it's relevant to training and performance. The in-focus video actually talks a little bit more detail about you can actually train the lactate inflection point, what happens to the lactate inflection point as it rises, and what happens to your training levels as a consequence. In-focus animations, we're going to have a look at one very, very shortly. But essentially, some students learn a lot better by seeing rather than hearing, rather than having us explain things. We've all been in conferences, our students have all sat in front of us and they're sort of scratching their heads thinking, I hear what they're saying, but I don't get it. And then they have this light bulb moment where they actually see something. So, for example, we're going to look at linear and non-linear coaching pedagogies. It might be ATP rate versus yield. So things that are a bit nebulous when they read about it or when we explain it, but when they see it, they have that light bulb moment. Resistance prescription. So looking at the difference between muscular power, muscular strength, and muscular endurance. We can give them the sets, the reps, the percentage of RM. We can do all that, but when they actually see it via a 3-4 minute animation, it sticks. They get it, they can then apply it. Okay, we're going to have a bit of time here to look at this particular animation. Fingers crossed it works. And this is one from Rachel's chapter on coaching and skill acquisition from Unit 3.
As an example of a nonlinear approach to coaching, let's have a look at a game of 4 corners. So in this game, we have 4 cones set out in a grid and 4 players. 3 attackers who stand on a cone each, and a defender, shown here in the yellow bib, who stands in the middle of the square. The aim is for the 3 attackers to keep the ball off the defender and to maintain possession, and the defender is trying to intercept the pass. The attackers cannot pass the ball diagonally across the square, and after they have made a pass, they must run to a vacant square. So in this game, the attackers only have 2 options of where to pass to, so it does make it a little bit easier for the defender to know where the ball may be going. In this approach, in this non-linear approach, what we can see is that the practice is actually mimicking how the movement skills could be performed in an actual game, but we're making it a little bit easier. So that's called task simplification. We're also focusing on the outcome. So the movement outcome for these players is to maintain possession of the ball by passing accurately to a teammate. So we've put constraints around the options that they have to ensure that they can achieve that outcome. There is some variability in practice though, because they have to move, there's an empty cone, and for the defender, there are actually 2 options that the players have to pass the ball. In this non-linear approach, what we see is that the players need to be making decisions as well as actually developing their movement skill. Linear and non-linear approaches to skill acquisition have both been shown to result in skill learning. However, non-linear approaches have been shown to result in greater retention of the movement skill. And when compared to linear approaches seem to result in players having fewer movement solutions. So in the game shown here, the player with the ball has multiple options in order to pass the ball forward.
Okay, so thank you to Rachel, and lots of thought has gone into these animations and in-focus videos, etc. If you actually Google linear and non-linear pedagogies, you'll get a whole list of things. Try clicking videos, and you certainly won't get anything that is as specific and targeted as what we've been able to put together. I've just sent one in for production, and it looks at lactate tolerance. And in that in-focus video, it actually looks at what lactate tolerance is, what happens with those hydrogen ions, how are they actually prevented from reaching the muscular fibers, how can someone have hydrogen ions and still be able to continue muscles contracting at maximal or near maximal force. So again, students being able to see, students being able to listen to the chapter author, and students being able to see some summaries on screen, very, very powerful learning. Okay, another game changer here, grade book. Every question that appears in our student books, so pulse check questions, case studies, collaborative tasks and pracs, which can be used to actually design SACs, module review questions, chapter review, and extensive VCAR questions that we've now ramped it to next level. They can be assigned to students. 3 fictitious students, Lynn, Charlotte, and Arthur. So what gradebook allows us to do, what it'll allow you to do as a teacher, is you can actually have this question bank from which you draw a set of questions and you give the same questions to the whole class. However, it also allows you to personalize those questions based on the level of understanding that students have shown. So again, it's tailored learning. So Lynn is a bit of a gun in our class. She needs more application style questions. So we can actually send Lynn a worksheet that has justify, extrapolate, and create. And that's based on a really, really strong understanding she's shown whilst we've gone through the classwork and coursework class disco, etc. We're going to give Charlotte a set of easier questions. So she's going to get a lot of state-defined outline questions. And we're also going to put in a lot of worked examples that Charlotte can actually look at that provides her with clarity and greater explanations. Arthur did really, really well in one module. However, he struggled in others. So what we can actually do is we can actually tailor the questions that we send through to Arthur so we can actually try and improve on that module that he sort of struggled a little bit with. We've all got those students. You sort of think, well, hang on, you've understood that really, really well. What's happening here? Students are very, very different. All right. So let's now look at what Gradebook allows you to do. So you can actually assign the same questions, different questions, tailored questions. Those questions can be multiple choice questions, VCAR questions. They can be short answer questions, extended questions. You decide which ones you want to send to your particular students. The whole class gets the same, or you can actually tailor it. We can see that Lynn here in the pulse check questions, she's done fairly well, 80%. Charlotte got 50%, Arthur got 60%. It also shows you what the class averages are. For the module review questions, we've seen Lynn struggle with the module review questions, but Charlotte did a lot better than the pulse check questions. In the chapter 2 pulse check questions, we're seeing some improvement for both Charlotte and for Lynn. So now what we're thinking about is this allows us to look at trends and patterns that are occurring throughout the class and throughout the whole year. So Gradebook is very much a game changer. It allows you to track student performances. It allows you to see how many attempts students have at each question. It allows you to compare the student response to the class average. It also allows you to drill into any question that they've attempted and for you to leave comments as well as suggested answers or some of the exemplar answers from the Nelson student books. You can actually upload exemplars and you can upload a suggested response that you want them to actually read. It allows you to identify cohort strengths and struggles. And actually, as I said, it allows you to map individual and class trends throughout the whole year. Really, really, really powerful and purposeful. Okay, so let's now look at Lynn. So Lynn's answered 6 questions. She hasn't done very well in the first question. She got 1.5 out of 3. The rest of them are fairly strong, except for question 5. What we do is you can click question 1. It allows us to look at Lynn's response. It allows us to provide her with feedback, which she will see. It also allows us to upload the exemplar response for Lynn to actually go back and check her initial response with. So again, Gradebook is going to give you this flexibility to tailor learning, and this is why it actually caters for different levels of learning and understanding. Gradebook allows you to provide that regular feedback. You can download how students have performed as a CSV, an Excel, or a Word document. Regardless of what your student learning management system is it Compass, is it Synergetic, is it Cluster, whatever student learning management system you're using, it actually allows you to import the results to that so you can share it with students immediately, and more importantly, you can share it with parents. So I know that some of you have reporting back, cumulative reporting back to students, to parents every 5-6 weeks. This will take all the hard yards out of it for you. Cognero is another game changer. It allows you to create module, topic, chapter tests, revision worksheets. It allows you to create SACs, mid-year, end-of-year exams. It's up to you. It's endless possibilities are there. You simply can search for specific content from a bank of questions that appear in the student books. And again, there's increased amount of VCAR questions, and we've actually put in our A+ note questions as well. So a lot of exam style questions that are there, you can search for those and you can then create your own assessment tasks, the worksheets, the SACs, the mid-year, end-of-year exams. The beauty with Cognero is that you can actually add new questions or modify existing ones to suit your own cohort. You can add more multiple choice questions, you can add less, you can put more short answer questions in there. You want to change an integrated response from a VCAR previous question, you can change it, modify it to make it suit your own class cohort. So imagine being able to import previous VCAR questions and you can add a few questions. You can create a whole new set of questions. You can use their stimulus material, but you want to ask a few more questions. you can do it with Cognero. Cognero allows you to create random tasks from a bank of questions, or it allows you to actually create specific tasks and specific questions based on that question bank. So you might actually put in a search for questions based on a level of difficulty, and it'll actually give you a whole range that you can actually choose specific questions from, or you can actually get Cognero to do it randomly for you. Question sets can be created from different chapters and content areas to replicate the VCA exam style formats. So this is where you can weave together questions from module 1, module 2, chapter 1, chapter 3. The possibilities are endless. Here's an example. So this is one from last year's exam. So this is a VCA question. We've acknowledged it. VCA given Cengage copyright permission to use it. What you can do is you can actually modify the stem of the question. So in this case, Charlotte's in our class. She's currently training with the under 21 rowing team. She trains 4 days a week, both in the water and in the gym. And her event, which is a 2,000 metre, takes her just over 6.5 minutes to complete. So you want to change that particular question to tailor it to someone in your class. Bang, you can do it. Or you can keep the stem of that particular question, and you can then change the questions that appear below it. Let's go back to Charlotte. If we use Charlotte as the stem and stimulus for this particular question, well, a VO2 maximus cycle and ergometer test is not really relevant. So we change that to a VO2 max rowing ergometer test, and we keep the same questions from VCA 2023. Or we can produce a whole new set of questions. Discuss why Charlotte performs this test rather than yo-yo intermittent test. Following the VO2 max ergometer test, it's recommended she performs an active recovery. Justify why this is better than a passive recovery. So again, huge flexibility to personalize the worksheet, the teaching, and the learning to the different levels within your particular class or classes. Fairly simple. You've got a platform, Cognero platform, create a new test. Up comes the different chapters. Up come the different modules, which then have all the different questions that we've asked throughout those particular modules. You drag those questions into this particular area. It then allows you to create the questions by themselves, the answers by themselves, or questions, answers, or you can simply print off the answers, give them to the students after they've attempted that. You can save it as a Word file, as a PDF file, print them obviously in the same formats. The beauty with Cognero is that you can put in your own school logo. You can put in your own name as a teacher. Some schools have got 5, 6, 7 classes, different teachers. So you might be the person who has to design the worksheet for fatigue and recovery mechanisms. You put in teacher name, date, duration of task. This is going to take all the hard yards out of it. Very modifiable. So again, here's an example where we're looking at the production of energy for human movement, chapter 6. It's got a multiple choice question. It has the stimulus material, and there's the answer. Similarly, we could have simply designed the test, questions only, answers appear at the end. Totally up to you as a teacher to decide how you want to run with it. Okay, let's now look at the student workbooks. These have gone to the next level. They are full color. They're not just black, white, gray, and a shade of another color. These are full color. They use contemporary examples, contemporary photos, contemporary images, and the latest sort of questions from VCA are in there, 2023, 2022, 2021, etc. These have got a multiple choice, short answer, extended response format in them, which replicate the end of year exam, etc. They are graduate. Sorry, I'll go back to that last one. The questions are graduated. The questions start off with warm-up questions, so lower order questions, ease of access for everyone in your class. They then go to a training question, next level. And then they build on those two previous question bank and answers. And then you've got the game on question. So again, multiple levels of entry, tailoring for different levels of learning within your classroom. Last slide. If you want more information about new study design, we've got a massive conference, and thank you to those of you who have supported it. Thank you to those of you who have done the right thing and registered. We've actually had to go to larger rooms. It will be massive on the 15th of August. You've got different electives. You know what to do if you want to attend. There's what's new videos on the VCAR website. Please make sure you look at those in terms of what's new. There are some other webinars that are occurring in August. Registrations are available and required. So please go to PE Study Design. That'll have a link for it. If you have any questions whatsoever, not so much about what I've said today, but about the new study design, please make sure you email Chris Clark. There are his details. He's going to answer all these questions at once on the frequently asked questions page on the VCAR website, and he's going to answer some of those questions as well at this particular conference. I want to thank you again for giving up your afternoon. I know everyone's worked really, really hard. Start of term 3, the premiership quarter, so much to do, so many things to make sure that we've got our head around. But hopefully I've been able to share with you how our student books, our workbooks, and our new digital platform, Nelson MindTap, will actually enhance teaching and learning. And it actually caters for those multiple levels of learning, understanding, interest, and engagement in different ways. All right, I'm going to hand over now to Anne-Marie, who heads the sales. She's an amazing support. And some of you have already spoken to Anne-Marie about seeing sample pages, about talking to one of the Cengage reps for more information. Anne-Marie, over to you.
Thanks so much, Rob. That was absolutely amazing, jam-packed and so informative. And it's such a pleasure to bring this content to schools. And as you would say, Rob, it ticks all the boxes. Everything at your fingertips to engage students and achieve exam success. Fantastic. So I'm just going to be really quick. So this is just the information you need for your booklets. Everything is kind of set out here. The student books, print plus digital, $86.95. Digital only $49.95. And I saw someone had a question there before regarding availability. You will be all so pleased. Everything will be available in October, which is fantastic. Also for schools book listing the student book, you get complimentary teacher copies and digital resources. Next slide, please, Rob. So again, the workbooks for Nelson Physical Education 1 to 4, $32.95. Practical, designed for the students to write in. Great to help with those literacy challenges, and again, available in October. And I think this is the last slide. So we're a very friendly team, and we are here to support you with any queries, meetings, requests for page proofs, anything we can do to assist you with your book listing decisions. So there's myself, Anne-Marie Mosley, Gillian Lim, and Jude Foster. Thank you so much.